Hey, what is up, guys? My name is Jacob Ravenscraft, Associate Dean of Spiritual Life. We are so glad that you are hopping into one of these watching parties, learning together what is ServeSZN and what are these service projects. Thank you for joining us. We're excited because we want you guys as students to learn this content together and to be able to process together. Hey, we're about to hear from the Director of Compassion Ministries, Morgan Caver, about the why. Why, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, why do we serve? So let's hear from her.
Hi you guys, my name is Morgan Caver and I'm the Director of Compassion Ministries and Spiritual Life. And basically what that means is that I get the chance to disciple students, and specifically through local service opportunities that we do in Riverside, Southern California, and all throughout the United States. And today I wanted to talk to you about ServeSZN and specifically my experience as a CBU student and just the different ways that I was able to grow through opportunities like this. There were so many things that I learned that developed me as a follower of Christ. And one of those things is just something so small but is so true, is that all people are created in God's image. And as I began to understand, man, I'm created in God's image, it helped me to see that I have value, that I have purpose, that I was created with dignity, and that I was created with intentionality. And as I began to see and understand how God sees me, I began to also see that God sees other people in this way too, that people matter to God. And one of the main ways that I know that people matter to God is through the gospel. For God to send Jesus to die on the cross and 3 days later raise from the dead to pay for the sin debt that I owe showed me that not only I'm valuable to God and worth that sacrifice, but all people are as well. And as I began to have my desires shaped and changed through God's word, I began to develop a heart of compassion for those around me. And as I began to develop a heart of compassion for those around me, I wanted to serve those around me. And I see this so blatantly as God's command on our life through the Great Commission, Matthew 28:19. It says, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you." And I also saw this clearly in verses like Matthew 22:37 that say, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." So what does this have to do with you? Well, ServeSZN is an opportunity for you to participate in an international service project, in a Serve Spring or a Serve Summer trip, or in a SZN summer opportunity. And let me be clear, these aren't the only ways that you can grow, but I do believe that these are great ways for you to develop as a follower of Christ. So whether you do 1 week in SoCal or 8 weeks in Southeast Asia, my hope is that as you step into growth, you will begin to reflect that people matter to you because people matter to God.
So some of us are maybe more wired to hear the why than others, but for all of us, no matter where we fall on how we're wired as people, it's so important. We need to know the why. And Morgan just helped us understand, right, as Christians in our identity, why we serve. And so, man, we want to be faithful to that. We want to grow in that. And one of our values in spiritual life is that we're other-oriented. And so these opportunities, these service projects, they allow us to really step into being other-oriented. They help us move from being selfish to selfless. And so we want to grow in this value of being other-oriented. Another value is that we are kingdom diversified, right? That we want to participate in God's global work about bringing all people groups, all nations to be reconciled back to God. We see this vision in Revelation 7:9, that the picture of heaven is all people groups are represented. So we heard the why from Morgan. Now you're maybe wondering, okay, we have international service projects. We have this spring break serve, summer serve. We have this SZN summer project. Okay, what does that look like, right? Like what to expect? Well, Chris Smith, our interim director of mobilization, she is just going to walk us through what to expect. What are the next steps? And what do I need to know to move forward in this application process? So let's go to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Smith, and I'm the Interim Director of Mobilization, and I'm here to explain to you the application, interview, and selection process for ISP, SL Serve projects, and SZN Summer in LA. So whether you've already completed the application or you're just praying about whether you want to leverage your spring break or summer for the gospel, it all starts with downloading the SL app. So on the SL app, when you download that, you're going to find some information, and the first thing is program info. And the program info is going to tell you for each program the training overview, the requirements for that program, the program cost, and other important information for each of those programs. So that's the nitty-gritty. It's everything you're going to want to know about a program to make a decision. The second thing, and to me one of the most exciting things, is team previews. We will have team previews for all 22 ISP projects, 5 SL Serve summer projects, and the SZN summer projects. You're going to find the dates, the length of the trip, the location, and the ministry focus of each of these projects. The next thing is application. The application is what you're going to fill out this year to apply for all of our opportunities. So for the first time, we're combining our application for every project that's available for you to participate in through Spiritual Life. So you'll have a chance to actually put every single opportunity you're interested in. You're going to prioritize those opportunities, and then we will consider you for every single opportunity based upon what you list. The next thing is application deadline. October 2nd is the application deadline. Immersion and Encounter Student Leadership, they have a different deadline. It's 1 week earlier on September 25th. So after that, you're probably wondering, so what does the process look like to apply? Well, let me break it down for you. The first thing is you have to complete an application. And again, you're going to find that in the SL app. The second thing is a $40 application fee. Now, the application fee is non-refundable, but if you do get chosen to participate on a team and it requires a background check, we're going to apply that money to the background check for you. The third thing is we want you to take the spiritual growth assessment. You're going to find that as well on the SL app. Now, the spiritual growth assessment, you may have taken it last year. What we want you to do is take it this fall and before the application deadline, because you're growing, you're changing. We want the most current information and assessment as to where you are in your walk with Christ. The third thing, or the next thing, is we need references. You have to submit 3 references. Now, that may sound really overwhelming to you, but don't feel that way. All you have to do is you give us an email address and a name for each of your 3 references through the Go Method software when you do your application, and it automatically sends out the reference request for you. It comes back directly into the system. You just probably want to let those people know that you've requested a reference from them. The last thing you need to complete your application is to go to a watch party. And guess what? That's what this is. So you can check that off your list. So the next part is the interview process. I think sometimes people get really intimidated by the thought of doing an interview. I want you to know that we're having interviews because we just want to get to know you. The interviews are going to be October 10th through 21st. They're going to be about 30 minutes long, and when it's time for you to sign up for an interview, we will send you an email to let you know. We're just excited to get to know you. However, don't be offended if your interview is waived. It just means that someone in Spiritual Life staff knows you well enough to move your application forward. After you complete the interview process, you are going to get a Google link to a confirmation form. You're probably thinking, what is a confirmation form? Basically, we understand that participating in a project is a two-way street. So what we're saying is we want you to choose us before we choose you. So before we go through the whole acceptance and team placement process, we want to make sure you're ready to make a commitment to accept your placement and fulfill your responsibility as a team member where you're placed. So next we come to, you filled out the application, you have done your interview, the selection process. In a word, it's complicated. Each program you're applying for has different criteria for team members. So for instance, spiritual maturity is a key factor in ISP acceptance. However, SL Serve projects are an amazing opportunity for mature and growing believers. In addition to that, there are a lot of factors that we have to look at when we consider your team placement. So I'm going to go through and run through some of those for you and explain each one. The first thing is your availability. Often I've seen a mistake to where somebody when they list their availability, they're thinking, I really want to go on, for instance, the Southeast Asia Encounter team. This is the dates of the trip. So that's what I'm going to put down as my availability. I'm going to encourage you not to make that mistake, because often that leads to someone not being able to be placed. So you're going to put down all of your summer availability, or in the case of a spring break, you're going to put your whole time that you're available so that we can find an opportunity to place you on the team. Second thing is skills and experience. So some of our teams are looking for unique skills and abilities. So for instance, this year we're sending teams to Spain. It's going to be Spain cheer and basketball camps. If you play basketball, or you were a cheerleader in high school or college, that might be something that we will look at because we would want you to be on that team. The next thing is physical and mental health. So walking 5 to 10 miles a day, serving in an unfamiliar environment, eating unfamiliar and sometimes unusual foods, being away from your family, and just living 24/7 with your teammates can be super stressful. We want to make sure you are in a healthy season, both physically and emotionally. The next thing is the number of us students who apply to the same project. Sometimes we have a project, and I call them sometimes the sexy project, meaning they're just really attractive to a bunch of students. It might be because of the description we used or the location, but we'll get maybe 40 students who'd apply to one team. Obviously, we can't place 40 students on one team, so not everybody's going to get that preference. Which leads me to the next thing, which is flexibility and team preferences. On your application, you are going to get an opportunity to select 3 team preferences. This is what I'm going to recommend. Your first preference, place that for the place that you really feel like you'll be the best fit. There's a second preference, you can do the same, the next favorite place. But on the third preference, you will have an opportunity to put down no preference, send me anywhere. We love those students because what that allows us to do is look to see where we have our gaps. And if your desire is just to serve cross-culturally and go somewhere, then we want to be able to put you on a team in one of those gaps. So that's just a little insider note. The next thing is your willingness to get vaccinated. Now, I'm talking about 2 different things there. I'm talking about childhood vaccinations and I'm talking about COVID. So let's stop and break those down because I think that's really important in this climate. The first thing is childhood vaccinations and vaccinations that are required and recommended by the CDC to get into the country or location you're going to. So for instance, in some locations, they're going to ask you to get a yellow fever vaccine or to get vaccinated for malaria. We will ask you if you're willing to get those vaccinations. If you are not, that's okay. We're just going to find a different place for you to go. In regards to COVID, things have really changed over the course of this last year. So right now, our expectation is that COVID is not going to be a factor in our team placement this year. But it might be because, as you know, things are changing constantly, especially in the international realm. So we're going to ask you if you're willing to be vaccinated or if you're fully vaccinated for COVID. Please answer those honestly, and then that way we know how to navigate and how to get you what you need in order to be able to travel to the country that you're requesting. The next thing is classification. Now, why do I say that? Whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, why does it matter? Sometimes it just comes down to we have so many slots, and if it's between a junior and a freshman, typically we are going to choose the junior. Why? Because we want everybody to have an opportunity to serve on one of our projects, whether local, whether U.S. projects through SL-Serve, or whether internationally. We want you to have that opportunity. So if we can give that opportunity to a senior because we know freshmen have more time, then sometimes that's just the decision we have to make. So this year, let me tell you what we have spots for. We have spots for 160 students on international service projects, 45 students on SL-Serve projects, 40 students for Gen Sen Summer. But even with 245 spots for students, we anticipate that there's not going to be enough space for everyone to be placed on a project this year. However, we do want you to know that we have a place in spiritual life for everyone to grow with us. So if you don't get selected this year for placement on a project, don't be discouraged. Come to SL Night. join an SL group, and just get around people who will help you grow in your relationship with Christ. We have a place for you to grow with us in spiritual life.
All right, so you just got a ton of information from our interim director of mobilization, Chris Smith. She laid it out, super helpful, but maybe a lot. Well, I want to address some of the biggest fears about these opportunities, which is money. Let's just talk about money. You just showed up to campus. You're in this watch party and you're thinking, I can't ask my parents for money. I don't have a job. I can't afford that. I mean, there's so many different reasons why we can just have a sense of fear or just obstacles that get in the way of us moving forward with the application. Well, here's the deal. You need to know some statistics, and some of the most helpful ones are from students who did the international service projects, because those are the most expensive service projects that we do. Now, here's the deal. We train on how to support race. You actually don't need money. Why? Because here's the crazy thing. 100% of our students were fully funded by support raising this last year. Incredible. Praise the Lord. And part of that was because it's a team. You are not on your own when you support race. You are doing this together. You get training and all of the tools that you need. 56% of students said that it was easier than they thought it was. Like I said, 100% of the students were fully funded by April. This is so incredible, such an exciting season for us in spiritual life as we do our best to help prepare and train students to go on this journey of support raising to fully fund their project. So here's what we're going to do now. We want you to hear now just from students. Don't just hear it from me, but we want you to hear from students who did this. Address the fears, address the obstacles, and just learn just the rewarding process that it was to go through support raising to be fully funded on their project. Let's hear from these students.
A big fear that I had walking into support raising was that I didn't know enough people to support raise, that even if I asked everyone I knew, that I would not be able to hit my goal. A way that the Lord replaced that fear with confidence in Him was just of reminding me of who He was. As I went to Scripture and trusted friends, they reminded me of His character, that He is a God who provides, and that I had nothing to fear, but that instead I should walk in boldness and that He would meet me there.
Yeah, so a specific fear I had as I applied for ISP was definitely finances. Raising support was very terrifying, and asking people for that support. And one way God removed that fear was just showing me that if this was really God's will for my life to go on this trip, that He would provide. And whenever He calls us to things, God will provide ways for us to do that. And so God just practically removed that fear and showed me that His church is called to support this mission, and that it's just our job to be faithful stewards.
Yeah, so going into ISP support raising, I had never been in a position before where a significant amount of money needed to be raised. So naturally, of course, I had plenty of fear and anxiety in such a position. However, I was reminded that it was the Lord who brought this opportunity, this open door to join an ISP team. And in doing so, it was going to bring Him glory and honor. And sure enough, week after week, the Lord proved His faithfulness by providing the funds I needed, as well as teaching me the importance of complete and utter reliance in Him.
I was definitely fearful about support raising because I thought that my family and friends would see it as a burden or an obligation, and so I was worried to ask them to help me, but I knew that God had called me to go overseas, and that if I remained faithful and obedient to that He would provide, and He absolutely did in the best way, because 100% of my funds came from support letters that I had sent out, and my family and friends just being excited to partner with me and seeing it as something worth investing in.
I grew up in a non-believing household. I wasn't raised in the church and don't really have a strong network of Christian friends and family. So I was really nervous about people not wanting to support me because they didn't understand the mission and the reason I was going. But it turns out my biggest supporters were actually people who aren't Christians or who aren't professing faith, and they blessed me the most just because of their loyalty and their friendship to me.
One time, I was about like 75% of the way through. I made a call that I'd been meaning to make for a while to a church, and this church was just incredibly gracious, and they just basically asked how much was missing that I needed to support raise, and the pastor just told me, hey, consider yourself fully funded, and they were just so eager to support and send, and I just felt incredibly blessed and so grateful for that.
I was definitely nervous about asking my friends because I knew they're also college students and don't have a lot of money to give. But one of my best friends actually asked her parents to help support me, and it became one of my biggest donations I got, and I was super surprised by that.
I actually decided to ask my mom to post on Facebook to see if any of her friends that don't even know me, if they would just be interested in giving to my trip. And like literally everyone did. My mom's friends that I would ask my mom, like, do you know this person? She's like, oh yeah, that's my friend from work. That's Kathy, that's Kim. So they were really like generous in giving to me, and I don't even know who I've literally never met them. They just know my mom. So it was really cool. And they're not Christians either. Super awesome.
Yeah, my church took a big role in sending me, and I think that's huge. In ISP, we have these awesome opportunities, but it's the church that sent us out. So I really told my church about what I was doing, and they not only gave financially very generously, but they prayed over me, they helped equip me knowing where the area I was going to, and just knowing that they were praying for me while I was gone. And when I got back, they wanted to hear all about it. So definitely get connected with your church, invite them into what you're doing.